Hello music fans, welcome to the Death by Unicorn channel, to another segment of What's New 2023 where I talk about new releases in metal, rock, and prog. And if you listen closely, you might just hear my dishwasher running in the background. That's the kind of high budget production we do here on this channel. Let's kick it off with my favorite album that was released over the past week or so that I heard. And I'll talk about all these albums in my order of preference. This one is by Karmic Juggernaut, and it's called Phantasmagloria. Phantasmagloria. Very interesting name. It's psychedelic progressive rock. It's the second album by this American band, and it's Prog, so of course I had to check it out, and I was actually very pleasantly surprised with how great and quirky this album is. If you're a fan of the Mars Volta, King Crimson, Thank You Scientist, and Flummox, this to me sounded like a mix of those four bands. There's some very cool percussion track in the middle called Psycho, and yeah, there sounds like Mars Volta vocals with King Crimson instrumentals with a bunch of horns. It's very cool. It's also unique how they put the credits for the album right in the last track. I kind of like that. Like they announce who the band members are and what they play. They have like spoken word announcing that. For people who listen to the album or music in general on shuffle, they might not like that if that track comes up randomly, but it actually kind of works well when you listen to the album from start to finish, as you should. And yeah, this is a really strong album. Will probably feature in my end of year top 40 or top 50 or whatever video I make at the end of the year. Secondly, I want to talk about Teramaze and their album Dalla Volta. This came out on April 27th. All the other albums I mentioned today came out on April 28th. And this is progressive metal. It's not like super heavy progressive metal. It's very much focused on clean singings, except in the first track there is a guest appearance by a harsh vocalist, but all the rest is very beautiful, so it could be a good gateway for people who want to get into progressive metal but don't typically like harsh vocals. This is the 11th album by this Australian band, and I'm not sure if it counts as a studio album or a compilation, as it's kind of half and half. Half of this release are new Teramaze songs, and the other half are piano versions and demo versions of songs that Teramaze has previously released. So it's kind of like two EPs smashed together to make a full-length album. And I really enjoy both halves of this, but I prefer the first half, of course, because that's what I enjoy most, is to hear new original songs. Their musicianship is off the charts. If you're a fan of bands like Dream Theater, you'll like this. Guitar solos are great, the riffs are great, but the spotlight here really goes on the vocals. The vocals are really stellar and stand out. They have much better power and delivery than recent Dream Theater releases. They also have really catchy poppy choruses, so the melodic writing on this album is really nice. My only negative about this band is the lyrical content does sound a bit too Christian for my liking. It's a bit too overtly Christian, but if you're into that could be a positive for you. And next I'm going to talk about Ignea and their album Dreams of Lands Unseen. This is melodic death metal. It's a female-fronted melodic death metal band. They've got symphonic influences, oriental influences, and progressive influences all thrown in there. It's the third album by this band from the Ukraine, and I heard the single Dunes, and I added it to my list to check out as soon as I heard that. Really powerful female vocals here, both clean and harsh vocals. For fans of bands like Ginger, Wintersea, Arch Enemy, other bands like that with powerful female clean and harsh vocals. Next I want to talk about Lunar Chamber and their album, well, it's an EP actually, called Shambhallic Vibrations. This is technical death metal. It's very progressive. It's also got black metal and doom metal influences in there. It's the debut EP by this American band, and I heard the single they released early called Spirit, Body, and the Seeing Self. That really caught my interest. I think fans of bands like Artificial Brain, Between the Buried and Me, Opeth, The Faceless, and Wilderun will like this. It sounds to me like a mix of all those bands, but they definitely have their own unique identity as well. The closing track, 3 crystalline blessed light flows from violet mountains into lunar chambers. It's a very long song name, and it's also a long song. It's almost 13 minutes long. Not quite, like, doesn't quite pass my threshold for a prog epic, but almost there. But it ends with a part that really gives me Between the Buried and Me vibes. Next, I want to talk about Crown the Empire and their album Dogma. This is metalcore with post-hardcore, hard rock, and some pop, hip-hop, and a little bit of proggy influences in there too. It's the 5th album by this American band. They've got those emo-style clean vocals with some aggressive screaming. If you're a fan of bands like Silverstein, Escape the Fate, but with a little more of a metalcore edge, like Atreyu and All That Remains, you should like this. However, this album's actually better than the recent output by all of those bands that I just mentioned, but it doesn't quite touch the best work by those bands that I mentioned. If you like the classic work by those bands but have been disappointed with their later output, check this out to hear Crown the Empire really putting passion into their metalcore. They also experiment with some sounds that are more typical in pop and hip-hop, which often annoys me when I hear that in metalcore, but they do it really well, and they don't do it so much that it's annoying. Second last one I'm going to talk about today is Enforced with their album War Remains. This is thrash metal with some death metal and hardcore punk influences thrown in there. It's the 3rd album by this American band. This is just very solid, fast, thrashy riffs. No nonsense thrash album if you just want to hear something like Slayer and just like mosh and crowd surf. This will be the album for you. And lastly, I'll talk about Hawkwind and their album The Future Never Waits. This is kind of psychedelic progressive space rock, and it's the 35th album by this British band. They've been going for a long time. They used to feature Lemmy from Motorhead. Now this is just very spacey and atmospheric music for fans of Pink Floyd, but almost like the soundtrack music of Pink Floyd rather than the most well-known music of Pink Floyd. The song Rama reminds me of the Bad Touch by Bloodhound Gang, which was kind of a weird thing that I noticed. You know, the song that's like, you and me, baby, ain't nothing but mammals, but let's do it like they do on the Discovery Channel. Yeah, their song Rama and here has the same chord progression, I believe, and the tempo is kind of similar. So when I was hearing that song, that's what I heard in my head, even though it's the melody and the lyrics were completely different. But yeah, same chord progression, I think. Other than that interesting tidbit, the music on this album seems like very background music to me. It all sounds great and beautiful and spacey and relaxing, but nothing really grabbed me. There was nothing exciting, so it doesn't really capture my attention. But pretty cool if you just want to have something on in the background that sounds nice and has a cool atmosphere. And that's it for my first impressions of these 7 albums that came out over the past week. Let me know if there's anything else in my area of expertise, metal, rock, and prog that came out, or even some things in other genres that you think I might like. Leave some suggestions down in the comments and I'll check them out. And until next time, peace out.